She has everything women dream of: beauty that turns heads, a career that commands respect, and more romantic options than she can count. But here's the dark secret no one dares to tell her. Her beauty isn't a blessing. It's a trap. From the moment she became attractive, the truth in her world died. Every compliment became a lie, every smile a strategy, every relationship built on sand. And by the time she realizes it, it's already too late. We grow up believing that beauty is the ultimate advantage. Doors open, strangers smile, opportunities appear, and in many ways that's true, but there's a darker side no one talks about. A paradox that quietly robs the most attractive women of one of the most valuable resources a human being can have: truth. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. One day she's just another teenager, awkward, figuring out who she is, learning through trial and error like everyone else. The next day she wakes up with a face and body that makes heads turn. And from that moment, the world around her changes, not just in how people treat her, but in the kind of information she receives. She doesn't realize it yet, but she has stepped into an alternate reality. Look at the celebrity world. You've seen this before. The actress who, for years, was adored for her looks and charm, suddenly becomes a meme when an unfiltered interview shows her completely out of touch with reality. Or the influencer who preaches about relationships online, while her own life is a string of public breakups. We've seen viral clips of supermodels on podcasts, shocked when told something that doesn't align with the constant praise they've lived on. They're not faking the shock. They're genuinely blindsided because no one ever told them otherwise. Here's the brutal truth. When you possess something people desperately want, whether it's money, status, or in this case beauty, the truth becomes inconvenient. And inconvenient truths don't survive long. Friends soften their words. Men filter their feedback. Strangers tell her exactly what she wants to hear. Not because they care about her growth, but because they're hoping for access, approval, or advantage. Think about it. How do you improve your judgment, your decision-making, your ability to read people? You need accurate feedback. You need people to tell you, without sugarcoating, when you're wrong, when you've made a mistake, when your assumptions are flawed. Without that, you're flying blind. You might be confident, but you'll be confidently wrong. And this is where the paradox hits hardest. The more beautiful she becomes, the less honest feedback she receives. Her attractiveness doesn't just bring attention, it filters reality. Every interaction becomes a negotiation, where truth is the losing currency and strategic agreement is the winning play. Men quickly learn that validation gets rewarded and honesty gets punished. Over time, she stops hearing truth at all. Look at the high-profile divorces and messy breakups we've seen splashed across headlines in the last few years. Cases where the public is stunned because she seemed to have it all. Often, behind the scenes, you'll find this same pattern. Years of living inside an echo chamber of flattery, with no real correction until the consequences explode into public view. This isn't just about romance, it's about life. Imagine going 20 years without anyone correcting you, without anyone challenging your worldview, without anyone saying, "Hey, that's not actually how it works." It feels good in the short term. Who doesn't like being told they're perfect? But over the long term, it's lethal. Because while everyone else is learning from failure, adjusting their strategies, building wisdom, she's building a map of the world that has nothing to do with reality. And here's the tragedy. She doesn't even know it's happening. She thinks she's making logical decisions. She thinks she understands men, relationships, and human nature. But her data is corrupted. Every conclusion she reaches, every plan she makes, is built on foundations of sand. And the higher she builds, the bigger the collapse when reality finally breaks through. We've watched public figures go through this in real time. The celebrity who lashes out when confronted with uncomfortable truths. The star who storms off a podcast because the host asked a question no one else dared to. It's not arrogance. It's not stupidity. It's something far more dangerous: the extinction of truth in her personal life. And the longer this goes on, the harder it becomes to reverse. Because when you've lived in a reality where every word, every compliment, every reassurance is carefully shaped to please you, real truth doesn't feel helpful. It feels like an attack. And the moment you start defending yourself against reality, reality stops defending you. If you really want to understand why beauty can become a curse, you have to follow the incentives. Because every human interaction, whether we like it or not, is shaped by rewards and punishments. This is the part nobody tells you. Honesty is not always rewarded. In fact, in the world of beautiful women, it's often punished. Let's be real, men are not stupid. They learn quickly what works and what doesn't. And when it comes to a stunning woman, telling her the truth, that's almost always the losing move. Giving her validation, that's almost always the winning one. This is what I call the honesty access equation. If honesty costs you the connection and validation maintains it, most people will choose validation every single time. We've all seen the celebrity interviews where this plays out. An A-list actress is asked a tough but fair question about her behavior, her relationships, her career choices, and instead of considering it, she shuts it down instantly, even walking off the set. What happens next? The internet floods with people defending her, reinforcing the narrative she already believes. In other words, she just punished honesty and rewarded validation. The lesson is learned instantly by anyone who might speak to her in the future. Don't challenge, just agree. The influencer world is even more transparent. Watch the viral dating podcasts. A model is told a blunt truth about modern relationships, maybe about how her behavior is perceived by men, and you can see the emotional shift immediately. The body language closes, the smile disappears. Her followers rush to her defense, and the men who dare to speak truth, the economics are obvious. If you want continued access, you learn to tell her what she wants to hear, not what's actually real. This is exactly how misinformation takes root. If you've ever worked for a boss with a fragile ego, you've lived this dynamic. You stop telling them when their strategy is wrong because you've seen what happens to people who do. You nod, you smile, you say, "That's a brilliant idea," while privately fixing the mess later. With beautiful women, the mess is her understanding of reality, but no one sticks around to fix it. They just keep feeding the story she wants to hear because it's easier than risking exile. Look at some of the high-profile breakups in the last year. Couples who seemed flawless on Instagram, whose captions read like poetry. Then the split happens, and in the interviews after, you hear hints. "I didn't feel heard. He never really told me what he thought. I just wish someone had been honest with me earlier." Those aren't random confessions. They're symptoms of years of strategic agreement replacing honest conversation. And it's not malicious. Most of the time, these men aren't out to deceive. They're just playing by the rules of the system. If truth costs them intimacy and lies keep them close, then from a purely economic standpoint, lying makes sense. Short-term survival beats long-term growth, at least in their minds. But here's the tragedy. This system doesn't just damage relationships, it destroys them. Because every decision she makes about love, trust, and commitment is now based on corrupted data. She chooses partners, sets boundaries, and navigates conflict using a reality that doesn't actually exist. It's like trying to sail across the ocean with a map drawn by someone who wanted to flatter you instead of guide you. You're not just off course, you're heading straight for the rocks. And if you think this is just about the ultra-famous or the hyper-privileged, it's not. This exact same dynamic is happening in workplaces, in friend groups, and in dating apps every single day. The moment validation becomes the currency, truth becomes extinct. Most forms of power come with a built-in learning curve. A CEO doesn't start at the top. They climb through smaller roles, making mistakes, correcting course, and developing judgment. A political leader usually works in local positions before they control a nation. Even athletes spend years training before they perform on the world stage. But beauty is different. For some women, that power arrives overnight. 13, 14 years old. Yesterday, she was invisible. Today, she's holding influence over grown men's emotions, decisions, even careers. She hasn't built the wisdom to handle it, but the power is already hers. And here's the problem. Power without wisdom doesn't just lead to mistakes, it guarantees disasters. We've seen this on the world stage. The young celebrity who becomes famous in her teens, adored, idolized, protected from criticism, only to hit her 20s and 30s completely unequipped to handle real conflict or accountability. Look at the public meltdowns, the impulsive social media rants, the relationships that burn out in months. The issue isn't a lack of intelligence. It's that she's been making high-impact decisions without the feedback that creates real-life competence. Take some of the biggest relationship scandals of the last year. You notice the same pattern. A woman with beauty, fame, and leverage, but no one in her circle willing to say no to her. The entourage agrees, the friends agree, the partner agrees, until one day, he's gone. And from the outside, it looks like betrayal, but on the inside, it's the inevitable result of years of decisions made in an echo chamber. And this isn't limited to Hollywood or the modeling industry. Think about influencers with millions of followers. They post an opinion about dating or marriage, and the comment section is flooded with fans praising every word. But the moment one critical voice appears, they're labeled a hater or a troll. That voice gets blocked, deleted, erased, and the feedback loop stays pure. The result? A massive audience reinforcing a worldview that might feel empowering but isn't connected to how real relationships work. Now, here's where I want you to see the human tragedy behind it. Imagine growing up in a world where you can bend reality without even trying, where the people around you change their opinions, their behavior, even their beliefs, just to stay in your good graces. At first, it feels like magic, but over time, it quietly robs you of something priceless. The chance to fail early, to learn, to develop the kind of strength that only comes from hearing the word no and adjusting accordingly. When you're shielded from consequences, you don't build wisdom. And when you don't build wisdom, the gap between your influence and your understanding grows wider every year. Eventually, that gap becomes a cliff, and one wrong step sends everything over the edge. We've watched this play out in real time with some of the most photographed women in the world. Women who seemed to have it all until suddenly, they didn't. Public divorces that leave them blindsided, friendships collapsing without explanation, careers stalling because they can't adapt to a world that doesn't cater to them anymore. And each time, you can almost hear the disbelief in their voices. I just don't understand what happened. But we do understand. Because once you see the pattern, power without wisdom, influence without accountability, the ending is predictable. And it's not that these women are villains. It's that they've been operating in a system that gave them the power to shape other people's reality, while removing their ability to shape their own. Once the system is in place, it starts feeding itself. This is what psychologists call a negative feedback loop, a pattern where each failure reinforces the very behavior that caused the failure in the first place. Here's how it works. She makes a decision based on bad information. Maybe she ends a relationship because she's told you deserve better, when the real issue was her own unrealistic expectations. The breakup happens, she feels hurt, and instead of getting honest reflection, the people around her double down. You were right, he just couldn't handle you. He was intimidated, you're perfect, he's the problem. The result? No lesson learned, no adjustment. The exact same strategy gets applied to the next relationship and fails again. And because she's used to filtering out anything that doesn't feel validating, she never stops to ask, what if I'm the one missing something? We've seen this play out publicly. Influencers going through serial breakups, posting long emotional captions about how men are afraid of strong women. Their comment sections are full of heart emojis and messages saying, "Never change, queen." But here's the reality. Never changing is exactly why the pattern keeps repeating. The entertainment industry is full of examples. A high-profile actress with 3 divorces in a decade gives an interview saying she still hasn't found a man who can match her energy. Maybe that's true. Or maybe every man who tried to tell her a hard truth learned very quickly that it was relationship suicide. Either way, she walks away convinced the problem is always on the other side. And it's not just romantic life. This feedback loop can spill into friendships, family dynamics, even business. When you punish truth and reward flattery, you train everyone in your orbit to become a yes person. And the fewer truth tellers you have, the less grounded in reality you become. The tragedy is, by the time she realizes she's in an echo chamber, it's often too late. Some women discover it in their 30s or 40s, after the beauty that once gave them leverage has faded just enough that the constant validation slows down. Suddenly, feedback they've avoided for decades comes crashing in all at once. Unfiltered, unavoidable, and overwhelming. We saw glimpses of this last year when a well-known model, once at the top of her industry, went viral for a tearful live stream. She admitted she felt lost, disconnected, unsure who her real friends were. And between the lines you could hear it, the quiet shock of someone who spent years hearing only what people thought she wanted to hear, finally realizing that most of it wasn't real. This is why the loop is so dangerous. It not only damages her relationships with others, it damages her relationship with reality itself. And without reality, there's no foundation to build on. Every step forward is actually a step deeper into the trap. If you've ever wondered why someone who seems to have it all keeps ending up in the same pain over and over again, this is it. It's not bad luck, it's not fate. It's the math of human behavior. When lies are rewarded, lies survive. And when the truth is punished, the truth goes extinct. If the system is so airtight, is there anyone who can actually tell her the truth and have it sink in? Yes. But they are rare. So rare that most beautiful women will only meet a handful in their entire lives. The first group are what I call the principled truth tellers. These are people who put integrity above approval. They'd rather lose a relationship than lie to keep it. They don't bend reality to keep the peace, and they don't sugarcoat. In the public eye, you see them in certain interviewers who have reputations for asking uncomfortable questions no one else will. The guest might flinch, the audience might gasp, but the truth gets spoken and the world notices. The second group are the unfiltered minds, often neurodiverse individuals who simply don't operate with the same social fear of conflict. They might not even understand why you would soften a fact to protect feelings. Watch some podcast debates where a guest calmly but directly dismantles an influencer's flawed belief without hesitation. There's no malice, just raw accuracy. And sometimes you can see the shock on her face not because it's cruel, but because she's never heard it put so plainly. The third group are the family anchors, fathers, brothers, uncles, or lifelong friends who have no romantic agenda. They have leverage because their relationship with her isn't based on her approval. A father can tell his daughter, "You're wrong, and here's why," and stay in her life no matter how much she resists. Sometimes, these voices are the only tether to reality she has left. But here's the catch. Even these rare truth tellers often fail. Why? Because if someone has spent years rewarding lies and punishing truth, they've trained themselves to reject honesty even from those who care most. We've seen it in public families, celebrities who cut off relatives after they speak out. The narrative becomes, "They're jealous," or "They don't understand me," when in reality, they might be the only ones who do. There are moments, though, rare and powerful, when the truth gets through. Maybe it's after a public breakup that she can't spin as someone else's fault. Maybe it's after a career setback that can't be fixed with charm. In those moments, a principled friend or a family anchor can finally say, This is what's been happening, and this is why. And for the first time, she listens. When it happens, it can change everything. We've seen women in the public eye who hit rock bottom, took a hard look in the mirror, and came back stronger. Not because they found better men, but because they finally found better information. And that shift didn't come from strangers in comment sections. It came from the rare few who cared enough to risk being hated in order to tell them the truth. If you are that rare person in someone's life, understand this. The truth might cost you comfort now, but it's the only thing that can save them later. Now, before you think this is a flaw unique to beautiful women, it's not. The same psychological trap can catch anyone who gains unearned power without the guardrails of accountability. Men fall into it too. Look at the ultra-successful entrepreneur who made millions before he was 30. He's surrounded by employees who depend on him, friends who benefit from his lifestyle, and women drawn to his status. Suddenly, no one's telling him when his ideas are terrible or his behavior is toxic. He starts to believe he's always right, not because he is, but because no one wants to risk losing access. Or the star athlete who's been pampered since high school, coaches bending rules for him, fans excusing bad behavior, friends protecting his image. By the time he reaches the professional leagues, he's developed habits and beliefs that reality has never challenged. We've all seen the headlines: reckless spending, self-destructive choices, relationships in chaos. And when it all collapses, the question is always the same. How could someone with so much lose it all? The answer is simple: power without wisdom. It's the same trap, just wearing different clothes. Whether it's beauty, money, fame, or influence, the danger isn't the power itself. It's what happens when power insulates you from consequences. Without pushback, without honest feedback, without reality checks, your understanding of the world warps. And when your understanding is warped, your decisions are wrong, consistently wrong. That's why this isn't a gender war, it's a human problem. Any person who is consistently rewarded for what they are, rather than who they are and how they act, will eventually drift away from reality. It's not about beauty versus status, male versus female. It's about the way human beings adapt to the incentive structures around them. And if the structure rewards flattery and punishes truth, everyone loses. The rare people who break this cycle, whether they're women who embrace uncomfortable honesty or men who welcome criticism, all have one thing in common. They see the value in reality over comfort. They would rather face temporary pain than live in a permanent illusion. And here's the thing: illusions always collapse. The only question is whether you choose to dismantle them yourself or wait until reality does it for you. If the trap is this deep, how do you escape it? The answer isn't easy, but it is simple, and it starts with one brutal commitment. You have to value truth over comfort. For women, this means actively seeking out people who will tell you what you don't want to hear, and then resisting the urge to push them away when they do. It means asking hard questions, and instead of searching for answers that feel good, searching for answers that make sense. In a world that will gladly feed you flattery for the rest of your life, you have to go hunting for the unfiltered version of reality. It's not about becoming less confident. It's about becoming unshakable, because your confidence is built on something real. Imagine walking into a relationship knowing you've already heard the hardest truths about yourself, and you've done the work to address them. That's power. That's the kind of beauty that lasts long after the surface changes. For men, it means having the courage to tell the truth even when it costs you in the short term. It's easy to validate someone into dysfunction. It's harder to love them enough to risk their anger. If you care about someone, you owe them more than comfort. You owe them clarity. For both men and women, it means designing your life so you can survive the loss of approval. Because here's the reality: if someone's affection for you depends on you lying to them, it's not love, it's dependence. And dependence is fragile. We've seen public examples of people breaking free. The actress who vanished from the spotlight for 2 years, then came back and admitted, "I realized I'd surrounded myself with people who never told me the truth." The former influencer who said, "I deleted my entire circle and started over with people who would call me out." In both cases, the transformation was obvious, not just in their careers, but in the way they carried themselves. The way out always requires a shock, a moment where you can no longer deny the cost of living in illusion. Sometimes it's heartbreak, sometimes it's failure. Sometimes it's just the quiet realization that despite having everything you thought you wanted, you're still deeply unhappy. That's the moment you choose. Keep the illusion and lose yourself, or lose the illusion and finally meet yourself. Because in the end, beauty, status, fame, they all fade. But wisdom compounds. And when you combine wisdom with whatever gifts you have, that's when you become unstoppable. The people who make it out of this trap aren't the ones who protect their comfort at all costs. They're the ones who burn down the lies, even when those lies were flattering. They choose the sting of the truth today over the slow death of deception tomorrow. And once they do, the very thing that was once their curse becomes their greatest advantage. Because now they're not just admired, they are respected, trusted, loved for who they are, not just what they are. Truth might cost you people who only loved your illusion, but it will give you the ones who can love your reality. And in the end, those are the only ones worth keeping. If this resonated with you, if you've seen yourself in this story or someone you care about, understand this: you are not powerless. The truth is still out there, but you have to want it more than you want comfort. And here's my challenge to you. Think of the one person in your life who would tell you the truth even if it hurt, and go ask them for it. Then, actually listen. That one conversation could be the moment your entire future shifts. If you've ever been caught in the trap of flattery, or if you've been the truth teller who risked it all, I want to hear your story in the comments. The more we talk about this, the more we break the cycle. And if you want more conversations like this, the ones that cut through the noise and go straight to the human core, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because beauty fades, power shifts, status disappears. But the ability to see reality clearly, that's the one thing no one can take from you. And it might just be the most beautiful thing you'll ever own.